Creative Mornings, please give a warm welcome to the stage, Zac Little.
All right, so we're going to start with a quick lesson which relates to our theme. There we go. Okay. So this is a guitar. It's the electric kind. I got it from my friend Josh when he moved to Minneapolis, and this is a G chord, okay? Okay, and this is a C chord. All right. And this is a D chord. Okay, so something you might notice about these chords is that my fingers are in all sorts of positions. You also might notice they're the wrong positions. I'm self-taught, but that's not important. The way that you play a guitar is that each string is tuned to a different note, right? And you bend different strings to create other notes to make it all harmonious. That's how it works. It's a lot to memorize, a lot of different hand positions, okay? So this instead is something that's called a power chord, all right? Here's G, here's C, here's D. Okay, so one thing that you might notice is that my fingers are not moving around nearly as much now because I'm just playing the root note and the fifth, okay? It's a lot easier, right? You also might notice that the original chords were like a lot fuller and sort of more like glittery sounding, very majestic. The power chord only uses the two, and it's a little bit plunkier. So what do you do about that, right? How do you make up for the difference? You add a little bit of distortion. So the fullness is back. Not so much the glitteriness. That's gone. Instead, there's kind of a grittiness. So maybe we're gonna write a grittier song. The idea behind this, the simplification of an existing practice with a little tweak to compensate for the shortcomings of the modification, which points you in a slightly different direction, is generally speaking how punk rock music came to exist. But we're not really going to talk about punk rock music today. We're going to talk about the ethos behind what we all just did. So, do we need to learn all of the rules in art, in creativity, in life, in love? Maybe, but probably not. Is there a lot that we can figure out on our own? Yes, definitely. And will the ways in which we figure it out on our own lend the things that we make a unique character? Will it maybe belong to us a little bit more? I think so. And I think that my own career is, all right, what's a term for like the opposite of a cautionary tale?
Inspiring fable?
Inspiring fable, that's pretty good. Success story, I like that. I like that better than mine. Yeah, so my name's Zac Little. I am a videographer, musician, podcaster, writer, man about town. The thing that I hear most often about myself is you're everywhere. And I quite like that because it's both flattering and it's a little bit ominous, sort of like Batman adjacent. But it wasn't always this way. I grew up not too far from here in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, which is scenic and beautiful and boring. I was a bored kid, and I was pretty smart. I was exactly the right ratio of bored and smart because I was not challenged in school, but I was smart enough not to tell anybody that. I had this impulse instead to build my own way out of Wolfboro eventually, but first just out of that boredom. So, a couple of key cultural things were happening then, the early 2000s. It was a heady time. The internet had been invented by Al Gore, but it hadn't taken over everything yet. It was a room in your house, and you called it on the telephone, which is hard to believe, I know. Another big thing back then, Osama bin Laden. He was out there. Nobody knew where, which was scary. Little did we know he was just at home playing Xbox for a decade. Somewhat similarly, I was at home watching a lot of MTV. This was a golden age of music video directors, guys like Spike Jonze and Michelle Gondry. They were visual artists who, if you were a creative teen back then, it felt like they were speaking directly to you. Their work intentionally showed its seams. You were supposed to think about how they did it. And I did. I thought about it a lot. And I started borrowing video cameras from my dad's various girlfriends and figuring it out with my friends. And I loved it. I loved doing it so much that I asked for a job at my local public access TV station, Wolfboro Community Television, which was my home away from home for years. I got paid to film town budget meetings and church services, and even, I was 16 years old, I was hosting a civic discussion show. And then I convinced my school to give me and my friends course credit to make our own sketch comedy news show at the TV station during the school day. This is most of what I did in high school. We wrote and shot and edited 20 full-length episodes. And what I loved doing about that show was that we did it all ourselves. We created our own music, our own special effects. We used a lot of duct tape and fishing line, and we painted our own green screen on a wall. Most of our scripts were literally handwritten. And, we wandered all over our school and our town. We were looking for empty conference rooms and gravel pits and abandoned spaces that we could use for sets. And I think about this kind of thing a lot. All that legwork we used to do in the age of AI. I get a lot of marketing emails now from people that have a robot that's going to do my editing for me or create my special effects for me. And it's like, oh, cool, so I have more time for the paperwork? Sounds great. Why would I give that up? I love it. And I learned to love it at an early age with my friends, somehow getting school credit. After high school, though, my next move was unclear. I looked at some art schools. I got into Emerson College, but I really could not afford the tuition. So I got a nearly full scholarship to Boston University, go Terriers. And I went there and I studied political science. I don't know why I did that. If the last 10 years of American history have taught us anything, it's that shit is not science. But the good news is, I was doing other stuff too. The year that I graduated high school, a little website called YouTube got started. And pretty soon it was a way to make a little bit of pocket money from the ad revenue from the videos you posted. So me and my friends from high school, we got an apartment together in Boston and we started right back up again. Writing and producing the same kind of sketches we wrote in high school, but this time without even the scant resources provided by public access TV. But our limitations made us more resourceful. And it's something that I've found to be true for pretty much my entire creative career. Across all kinds of cheap apartments in Boston, we made all kinds of videos. I taught myself how to do stop motion animation, and I made stuff like this. This was around 2010, and the influencer economy was just starting to form, and we all modestly but weirdly profited from this new world. For instance, Ford gave one of my friends a car, and they also gave us $5,000 to hire a band to play at a bar near Fenway and also to cover the bar tab for the audience. I think we spent $2,000 in 35 minutes. It's the only time I've ever had top shelf whiskey. This was marketing for Ford, somehow. And then also Comcast sent me to the MTV Movie Awards to conduct red carpet interviews. And I remember I had an iPod Touch, and it had an early version of the voice memo app. And I was using that as a microphone on the red carpet. And all of these real reporters from E! And Entertainment Tonight, they kept asking me what is that? What are you doing? Now, this has become a very commonplace practice. Now there's even a joke in the first season of Ted Lasso about it. All the reporters throw their phones up onto the podium. So we do have to pause here and ask ourselves, did I invent this reporting technique? Let's say yeah. Let's say that I did. So then we all graduated from college and we got professional jobs, and I moved here to Portsmouth in 2011. I started working as a corporate trainer for a government contractor, but I kept making stuff on the side. My videos were getting more experimental and personal. I started mixing styles and tones. This was the vlogging era, so I did a lot of talking, but I tried to counterbalance the inherent insufferability of that with beautiful montages and funny tricks. Like I used the principle behind green screening to take the sky out behind me, and I replaced it with a sky that I animated with construction paper. The sort of videos that I was making became more like a self-documentary. It was sort of more like a diary than it was really like a means of entertaining others or making any money. And that really wasn't an option anymore anyway. The influencer trend had really kicked in by this point, and brands realized that they should give money to cute Australians to do like ASMR unboxing videos instead of buying booze for weird goofballs in Boston to try to get people to buy Fords. It got so personal eventually that it just became really well-edited videos of my kids. And so it was no longer a form of creative expression that I was sharing widely. My outward creative urges moved to podcasting. I found just audio to be like weirdly relaxing, and I still do, which is why my podcast comes out whenever I feel like it. It's called Make a Mixtape, and you can find it wherever podcasts are played. There's a staged photo from my most recent interview with our own Jen Scumaci. That'll be the next episode. So at the time, 2017, 2018, it sort of felt like that was the end of this story. That was the end of my creative journey as a video guy. It can be an expensive practice, and I remember when my huge Mac that my mom bought me when I was in college, when it finally died, I could not afford another computer powerful enough to edit video, and I kind of made my peace with it. I would do my podcast, which required a lot less RAM, and I would do modest little video edits on my phone of my kids at the park, and that would be it. That wasn't it. Okay. I applied for Leadership Seacoast, which you just heard about, and I was accepted to their class of 2019. And I met a huge group of civic leaders and movers and shakers, and I was really intimidated by these people. I really valued the way that they were clearly making our community a better place. And as we went through the program, it came as a real shock to me to learn that they valued me back, particularly as a communicator and a synthesizer of information for the group. As it turns out, editing video and audio for decades makes you a good editor in a general sense. You learn to hear and hold on to what you need to hear and hold on to, and you let go of the rest. And it's funny, but my classmates in Leadership Seacoast helped me realize that what I had here was a tool set at all. It sounds a little bit silly to admit it, but I was never formally trained. Public access TV and YouTube are not places that require rigor and discipline. Everything that I made, cartoons, music, podcasts, short films, I figured out a technique that would work for me along the way. And because I knew I wasn't doing it right, I didn't value it the way that I should have. I didn't value my talents. I had fallen into a career unrelated to creativity, and I didn't imagine, or maybe didn't allow myself to imagine, a world beyond that. But I was starting to see it a little bit differently. And yeah, this is going to sound like a joke, but it's not. My very odd creative tool set was actually perfect for working at a community bank. I got recruited by a classmate from Leadership Seacoast, Liz, who you met earlier, to come work as a storyteller for Kennebunk Savings. At first, I was just hired as a writer. The idea was that I would write stories about their community involvement, the interesting donations, their work in the recovery space, and the knack for synthesis that I had demonstrated in class would come in handy. But the thing is, this new career started in June of 2020, and people were working remote, people were masked up, keeping their distance, and there was a need for connection and engagement. The bank used to have a lot of company and community events, and now suddenly the best they could do, the best anybody could do, was Zoom and trivia or whatever. So I pitched, hey, what if we start making silly videos, like a lot of them? And I started writing sketches that reflected the messaging and values that leadership wanted to express, but that were also very dense with jokes, because I knew the jokes would emphasize the message. And this worked. It became a genuine organizational tool for communicating and connecting with each other and celebrating our nonprofit partners, even teaching financial literacy and fraud awareness. And by the way, when I started, I did not really know much of anything about banking, or even really about marketing. But I had this personal creative tool set, And because it was personal, it injected personality into everything that I made, which meshed really well with a personal, neighborly, community-driven brand. So these days, when I describe to people what I'm doing at work, the reaction I get most often is, "What the hell is your job?" In a given week, I might be getting on a fishing boat to film at a shellfish farm, then writing a sketch about cybersecurity where I set a laptop on fire, coordinating a big check photo with 6 of my coworkers at a land trust, and then testing out a stunt for a holiday video where I hit my CEO with a car to reenact a scene with Elf from Elf. Those are not made-up examples, by the way. We actually just won an award for the video that's represented on the top left there, and here's the Elf one. So there's my CEO, and there's my car. Now, don't worry, all right? This is a composite shot. So what I did was I filmed him skipping, and then I built a dummy of his approximate height out of styrofoam and cardboard, and I ran that over, and then I spliced the shots together. No executives were harmed in the making of this video. One more time, there we go, all right. So yeah, I have a weird, unique job, and it's one that never would have existed had I not forged my own weird, unique path as a creative person. In the 5 years that I've been doing this professionally, I have reached back to draw on every weird little technique and shortcut that I found along the way. It's amazing how well my past experience maps directly over my work now. I write in a way that makes it easy for non-actors, because my friends in high school couldn't say long lines and bankers can't either. And so I know how to cleanly stitch sentence fragments together and hide it in editing. I also shoot very quickly and efficiently, which is great in a professional workplace because nobody feels like you're taking them from their real job for too long. But I learned to do that because I was filming on the street in Boston with my friends, and we didn't have a permit, and we had $5,000 in our pocket from Ford that we were not going to be able to explain to the police. And I'm also still learning. I do the video for Hope on Haven Hill's gala every year, and I do the video for CreativeMornings, and sometimes I work for Jay. And I've learned nearly as much in the last 3 or 4 years as I've learned in the previous 20. And I love that. I'm really proud of that. I love lifelong learning and improving, and I think that this path that I am articulating here enables a career of lifelong learning and improvement and endless discovery and constant creative satisfaction. Not everybody's path looks like this. Maybe nobody's does. But there are other variations. I know there are. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to learn all the rules. You just have to do it yourself, your own way. All right, we got a video. All right, thank you.